Hey guys, it's Matt. If you're driving or just listening, you don't need to see the tabs. I'm going to tab around. Of course, I'm limited to thumbnails, so you're not missing anything. Of course, I'll describe what you're looking at, and even that isn't that important. So, guys, I don't know even where to start this. I've been watching the Olympics at night for a few reasons, and it's like 60-40. 60%, I always liked the Olympics. It was always the representation of any last bastion of pure sport, which really doesn't exist because even though they're not getting paid to run, they're already under multi-million dollar deal endorsements. Okay, but it's still, hey, you can get to the judo competition. Somebody comes up from Latvia and somebody comes up from whatever, Mexico, and they're not really making anything. And there is some pure sport there. So I've been watching for that reason because I've abandoned all the other sports other than NASCAR, where I just sit there with a six-pack of beer and watch the cars go round and round and round. So the other 40% I'm watching is just to get a gauge on how the world is being presented with this thing and, keeping an ear to the world. And that is the creepy, creepy, creepy part that I'm going to talk about here. The divide, guys, the divide between us and somebody that is considered normal is so massive at this point. It's just, I guess it was the latest. I've emailed, back and forth hundreds of people about this stuff, and Alex is the most recent. And yes, don't even bother. The divide is so large, and it's not even a divide. They're on the frequency. They're on the download. It is no, you just, but their point is they see where we're coming from is so insane to the normal person. And as I've said in many videos, of course, they would be right because that is what the reality is dictating. They're on the exact frequency of what the reality is presenting. They're right. We're trying to hold on to something that no longer exists. So it's true. And objectively, per the little check boxes that the reality puts forth, it would be Matt or you versus the people down your cul-de-sac, and the insane boxes would be under you. But that's, hey, fine, fine. We don't want to be on that Tokyo trolley, do we? We're off that ship. So we've got a lot of tabs here, guys. And again, you're not missing anything by not seeing my little thumbnails. They don't let me do anything else. So where the heck to start? Okay, let's just do an exercise on inner knowing. All right, inner knowing, and I'm going to say some things that will be completely crazy, even to many of you guys, or if anybody's new. Although the old guard will be like, yeah, I can see that. You'll just, not shake your head, nod your head in agreement, because we almost can't be too crazy anymore. So this is like a little mini exercise in inner knowing. And, the first thing I saw here when this happened, Simone Biles, of course, was expected to win everything again, Olympic gold, all around gold. And I don't know if you haven't paid attention, let me just do a minute or two of backstory. The system itself, whatever exists here that runs its wishes through its minions, it loves the GOAT symbol, the greatest of all time. It loves it. Now, I don't, I can just read the Matrix Code and notice the Matrix Code, how it relates to their astrology, or it's creepy and to the highest sense. But I think it started with Roger Federer, years ago, where they just, Nike advertisements and billboards, it just said GOAT. And I didn't even know what it meant at the time. It was like, this was maybe even 10 years ago. And then they love it. They love it. And then they took it to Brady. Tom Brady, the most boring person in the history of the world, is the GOAT. And they've done it with a few others. But the way they pushed it on Simone Biles, the top gymnast, American gymnast, supposed to win everything, the way they pushed it on her was as unnatural as I've ever seen. Months and months going into it. She's the GOAT. She's the greatest of all time. But she hadn't even, she won the all-around in the last Olympics, Rio de Janeiro. And I thought, let's just from the level of everything being normal, which it isn't. The whole reality's broken down. And I'll go there soon. Don't worry, I'll go there. But I thought, who wants to be, you're going into a huge pressure competition, and see, the guys, the evil genius behind the plan here is so incredible to me. It's so non-human. It's so well thought out from their perspective. That who wants to keep having interview after interview where you saying the GOAT and you haven't competed yet? Now, technically, you could have already considered her the greatest of all time, but basically, they're saying if she just does anything in Tokyo, she's cemented she maybe already had cemented, but you want to be called the GOAT right before the biggest nerve competition of all time, the Olympics, with all this pressure building up. And if anybody's yelling at me saying, Matt, are you about to make an excuse for Simone why she bowed out and mentally couldn't get her routines? No, I'm saying this is a reality. It's not a reality breakdown, but it is just the parts of reality we notice and can see through is truly amazing. So no, I'm not apologizing. I'm saying in some way this was all planned. I mean, and I see people rising up out of their bathtub saying, of course it was. Well, let's hear me out. Sit back in your lazy boy and grab one and relax for this is talk this stuff out ain't easy. So they're all this GOAT stuff. They even have her weeks before the Olympics. She's holding the leash of a goat. She's the GOAT. So, of course, for those that don't know, let me just do 45 seconds. First night, team competition, she comes out and she gets whatever they call the gymnastic jitters. And it is a real thing, okay? It is a real thing. Absolutely is a real thing. There are other sports that there's Steve Sachs or whatever, if that's his name. He couldn't. Maybe I'm getting I think that's who it was, if I remember correctly, but it might be somebody else. Second baseman gets a ground ball, throws it over to first base, been doing it his whole life. All of a sudden, he can't throw to first base. There was a catcher that could gun somebody out stealing a base, but just a simple throw back to the pitcher, he would bounce it back. He couldn't throw it back to the pitcher. You get this mental, so it's real. But I'm not saying what happened to Simone is real. I'm just saying this is a possible condition. For anybody saying there's no possible way she'd be the night of the competition, just didn't know what she was going to do in the air. So guys, if those that don't know what's going on, she got these jitters, these mental block, couldn't flip in the air, and just basically bowed out right before the main team competition and said, I'm not going to be of any help to anybody, and I'm going to bow out. And the replacement gymnast, I guess, came on, and she was there rooting on her team. But here's the thing. I just thought, okay, first thing I thought is, look, of course, I thought I guess maybe not luckily or unluckily, the initial reaction is to my mind goes through a set of circumstances of which the world could still be real. And I'll say all that pressure that's been put on her about the GOAT, and it's just monumental pressure, and now she can't, she doesn't know where she is in the air, and now she's going to bow out, and, at first you look at it at that sense. Well, Matt, you shouldn't be looking at it with the world as real sense after all that you've learned. I agree. Maybe I shouldn't. But as time went on, or initially the other side of me, just 20 minutes later, of course, watching this happen, I thought, okay, wait a second here. What are the chances? Like that, was it 50 pages in the book? What are the chances of this? What are the chances? Let the inner knowing come forth and the inner tuning fork. What are the chances that the number one? Now we've never seen any gymnast in the Olympics. I watched gymnastics in the Olympics. Hey, maybe I missed something, but I've watched it going back to the late 70s, the gymnastics. And I've never seen anything like this. So I thought, what are the chances that although this is a real condition, the number one gymnast in the world of all time is the one that gets the problem the night of the competition? And then I thought, okay, it's not sitting right with me, of course, but I don't want to do this too much. It's like every time I turn around outside, on the street corner, there's some secret Illuminati plot that I'm going to, then sometimes I worry about going too far. I do. It's like, Matt, is everything you're going to see an Illuminati plot? I mean, don't go too far. Maybe you're losing it, man. You got to keep it in check. So I'm always balancing that as well. Like maybe I'm losing it. Like some guy just in a street corner in Philadelphia puts two dogs with relish into a bun, and I'm thinking it's an Illuminati plot of some kind. Like, well, maybe I'm going too far here. All the pressure Simone was under, and I thought about that. What are the chances of all the people in the world, all the Olympics, we've never seen anything like this, the GOAT, and I think there's as usual, there's something going on here. Now, then, whenever you're not sure, and again, overall, guys, this is a screen exercise. This really doesn't, it tells us how not real the world is, which can tell you something about yourself, but ultimately it's not that important. It's just a good reminder. But if you're not sure, if you're having fun trying to figure this stuff out or whatever the world might throw at us as time goes by, it will reveal itself. Okay, it will reveal itself in a very short period of time. No, Czar, there's not time for that. It will reveal itself. Now, very quickly, maybe the next day, somebody could say, well, Matt, Nike came to the aid of their star athlete. It just didn't sit right. Very quickly, Nike makes these ads that start coming out with empty press conferences after the event, just chairs and no chairs for the press and no microphones up on the table, but no one there. And Nike's saying, we need to start respecting mental health of athletes, respecting mental health or nobody, I don't know what they said in the initial ads. Nobody thinks about the mental health of athletes. And, somebody, could say, wait, Matt, they're putting a fire out here. They had to come to the aid of their star and, they had to start running these ads. And it just was a little too ready to go, if you ask me, and the way they put it was just odd. It was, like we need to start respecting mental health. And immediately when I heard it, I thought, well, who's not respecting? You're picking a fight with, so like, who's not respecting the mental health of athletes? Like just the way it was phrased or posited, it was like this big problem has been, and that's the way they start to treat it. Like we've ignored the mental health of athletes. It's time to think of these people as people too. Like there's this big problem that's been going on, and I can hear you. We agree. I can hear you. This is exactly the way they do business. A person rising out of their bathtub yelling Hegelian dialectic at their newly painted walls. Yeah, I hear you. Exactly. It's always been a problem. It's time to address it. And it unfortunately it came out, and with Simone it came out. And maybe if we could have got to her earlier, or maybe, I mean, it's so evil genius that maybe what happened to Simone was real. Maybe. And the Whopper computer attached to the Sentient World simulation, attached to Joshua from War Games, and Matthew Broderick's up there pulling levers, and maybe it came out and said, something's popping, some ticker tape's coming out of the Whopper here. Not that it can't communicate directly like Johnny Depp in the computer in Transcendence, but it says, use this system. You can use this. Even though, no, I don't think it, I really, of course, if I had to err on the side of is it real or planned or plotted, what do you think I'm going to come up with? It's completely real. Of course, I don't err on that side. But I'm saying even if it is, the system is so evil genius, it can use this. And I don't think that's what's happening. But using it for their own goals. Oh, this is Simone Biles unexpectedly, again, I don't think this is what happened, showed an unexpected mental health breakdown. We're going to use this to implant in the minds of people a problem that we'll just say has existed forever and ever and ever, that really never existed. Just like certain types of hate for certain groups, certain groups. It's just completely manufactured and just made it up, and they'll make half the country believes it's all real. So as it always reveals itself, and then on top of that, you have Michael Phelps. They go to Michael Phelps, and several times. Let's just go over here. We've seen enough of this. Let me tell you, I'm not going to keep these pictures of Mike Tirico up very long. Very difficult. If you're eating or something, don't, wait a few minutes. This guy is there anybody more obnoxious in the world than this guy? I would say no. It's very close. It's very close. So I won't keep this up long, but he's sitting with Michael Phelps and he's like, Michael, Michael has some words to say about, the mental health of athletes. And Michael starts talking, well, the pressure and this and that. And I'm going, oh, and there's nobody that's, to me, like Phelps is like a gigantic puppet of, all those stories of him, getting busted and everything. And it just was like, it seemed way more like a presentation than but see, here's the thing, guys, if anybody's yelling at me, I'm not saying Michael Phelps really, if you're new to this channel, I'm not saying Michael Phelps didn't have a pot problem and didn't get busted. I'm saying if people are tuned to the frequency, like certain minions, like if they're tuned to the frequency, they are literally going to become like a puppet and do whatever the system wants. So he might have really had a problem, but it almost like it was like planned for him without him even knowing about it. I think the download can be that powerful in these minions. I really do. I'm not saying it's all in the past. It was like, well, it's fake or it's real. No, it's not just less filling or tastes great. It's not just fake or real. What I'm saying is, what Gus is saying here is, Michael Phelps really might have had a pot problem, issues with alcoholism or whatever, busted a couple times. You've seen those police pictures of Michael Phelps, or he had those rough years or whatever before he made his comeback. I'm saying he probably did go through that, but I'm saying at the same time, it's not just possible, it's probable. That's exactly what the system wanted. Now, I don't know how that is accomplished. But, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got obvious puppets that just lose their minds, like Britney Spears in her interview, which maybe that was all planned or whatever. But then you have Lindsay Lohan breakdowns and things like that. I'm saying he probably did get busted, but it's what they wanted. So you could say, back to Simone, this potentially she really had a problem with, maybe I closed out of that tab. It doesn't matter. We don't need to go back. But it's exactly what the system wanted. And Michael Phelps, his most recent presentation is he's looking into the camera all emotional about the mental health of athletes and nobody knows what we go through. And I just want, this is just so contrived. Anyway, guys, reality is just what is presented today is so fascinating. It's so bizarre. It's so evil genius. If you shake your head and don't understand, I don't understand it. I'd either. It will never truly understand it. But see, the difference is we notice it. We're still rooted to something that's a lot more real. We notice it, and that's for now. That's good enough for us, and we're going to try to hold on to the aspect that notices it. So let's go back to Mike here, and just switch gears and talk about the C thing a bit. I'm showing now. There's no reason for this really. I might tie it in later. This is the largest building in the world now. And I'll tell you why I even looked this up. But I'm just putting on this tab just for some variety. It's the BURJ. I'm not even going to try to announce it. BURJ Khalifa of Dubai. It's like a half a mile tall. So we want to talk about the Tower of Babel and human beings trying to probably doing things they shouldn't be doing. I mean, this is a great example. But the point is, guys, let me just keep it here for a minute. Let's just get this out of the way. There's two huge towers in Tokyo, and I didn't realize this one is called the Tokyo Sky Tree. Yeah, the Tokyo Sky Tree, this huge tower, the fourth largest structure in the world behind the building I just showed. I didn't know what it was called, so I just happened to look up how big is the Tokyo Tower, and I didn't know there was another one. And of course, is anybody surprised? They have some sort of replica of the Eiffel Tower, like it was designed from that. And it says here, 333 meters. So I'm just doing some basic research, and within one or two clicks, it leads me to 333 meters. Now, this is not the tower, the Sky Tower. This is the tower that is some sort of in some way based on the Eiffel Tower, but it's a little bit taller. But is anybody surprised that within a few clicks, the 333 jumps out, or the 9 paired with the you-know-what jumps out, and the gematria that jumps out at you? Is anybody surprised? No. It's just the way, it's not a very real world. They should change that whole freaking Epcot presentation. Or it's not, I guess it's not Epcot, it's Disney. It's a small world, it's a fake world after all, it's fake world. That's what it should be. And these little freaking animatrons running around with their lube. Some guy getting a little closer to you, you don't know, in a dark ride, but he's holding around your waist. All right, that's a Small World ride. I don't remember it much, but it's been 40 some years. So just about the sea thing, guys, I'm not going to talk about this much anymore. I don't think I'm going to do another prediction video. It's so incredible and I don't, how do you turn this into a sea video? But it does relate to the Olympics, because I did want to get this out in relation to the Olympics. One of the main purposes of the Olympics, and in terms of what it's trying to present, these are just pictures of let's put on a different picture of Tokyo here in downtown Tokyo, how massive the city is. It's just urban sprawl. I think it's probably like twice the size of New York City. And they have Mike Tirico down on the streets, walking through the famous fish and sushi market. And of course, it's completely quiet. There's nobody, there's no hustle and bustle. There's hardly any cars on the streets. And, the vendors are at their fish market stations. They're ready to sell their sashimi. But nobody's there. And, again, I just start thinking, like, how are they doing this? How are they keeping this system together? And this is, guys, I could do a 2-hour just on this. I mean, for 40 years, we told how one part of the economy is so contingent and hanging on the health of the other, and it's all tied together, and banks are all lending together, and one goes down, they all go down, and domino line and LIBOR lending and all this bull crap. And you see these empty markets, and Mike Tirico walking around the streets of Tokyo, and it's just removing the economic activity. If it was just, in other words, the point is, guys, the same amount of sushi obviously is not being bought. Obviously. And I'm not going to turn this into a 2-hour CV sidebar, but the ripple effect, if it was just Tokyo having a problem and nothing else in the world, just Tokyo, the ripple effect of that with the stalled economic activity should be just catastrophic it should be 1929 all over again. And I hear you rising up out of your bath. What do you mean stalled economic activity? Housing market is through the roof. Cars, new car lots, can't keep cars on the lot. I hear you. They're probably manifestations of inflation. It is manifestations of inflation, but that is not offset by what you saw in Tokyo with the streets. They're just quiet. That when people are afraid to go out, they're not going to go out. They're not going to go to the movie. They're not going to go to the show. The cumulative economic impact of quiet streets is 10 times or 100 times the fact that you're seeing food inflation and housing market go up, and certain new car, Subaru can't keep the Outbacks or whatever on the lot. Certain car brands are flying off the shelves. That doesn't outweigh that. So it's just Mike walking around these streets of Tokyo, and I'm watching this thinking, if there was nothing else in the world, if it was isolated just to Tokyo, by itself, it should be a problem for the world. So it is just incredible how they're keeping this going. It is beyond what any humans could pull off. It's just absolutely, if you really, even in the truth community, we don't go far enough. And if we just kept opening the doors and looking, how'd they do this? And then that leads to this door, and how'd that be pulled off? And how does this pulled off? And all the bank loans, even in the Japanese fish market, all the bank loans, and how are they being paid because no one's buying the sushi? And it's just incredible. It's beyond anything anybody could fathom. So anyway, that just tells you the point of that exercise. It tells you about the world we live in. If you're walking around and you're the character in a Sims game, whoever put the Sims game together can do whatever they want. And I don't think the evil group here, the Dr. Evils, are that powerful, but they do have they do understand how to pull. I've said this before: certain reality buttons and levers, and get things done. You know, they know, if the astrology and what's pre-planned out. I was having a back and forth with someone yesterday on email. If what's pre-planned out for the world via the astrology and the 20-some thousand year cycle, they know what's coming. The as above, so below. They know what's coming, and then they kind of use it. They ride the wave. So in the astrology of it all, it might be time for the U.S. to go through, not the U.S., the world to go through something like this. Whatever it, and they're in some way they're going to. That doesn't mean that what they present as the illness is what they say it is. Of course, it could be other things, but they know it's something's coming from it, like cosmically or astrology wise, and then they will say, well, wave's coming in. Let's ride it. Let's use it to our advantage. So it's not. I don't think they create it or anything like that. They see what's coming because they have an image or an understanding of how the world works, and they ride it, and they use it, and they harness it. And it's exactly what they're doing here. So, guys, let's go over this. Was Mike Tirico. Hopefully we don't have to look at him again today or for the rest of your life. 333 meters high on the... Oh, this is another thing I wanted to say about the tower in Tokyo. This is do you want to talk about symptoms of one world system? There's so many symptoms that a one world system exists. I could do a 24-hour filibuster at a podium with a Texas catheter without a note in front of me. There's just the fact that by itself, why would Japan? Look, I didn't look at this more than, let's see what it says here. I didn't look at this for more than a few minutes, so hopefully I won't totally butcher this. But the world's tallest self-supported steel tower is this, and blah, blah, blah. Taller, see here it is, taller than its model, the Eiffel Tower. So it's modeled from the Eiffel Tower. Constant presentations on one world system. And if anybody's rising up out of their bathtub and screaming like, what are you talking about? If you have Japanese heritage and you live in Tokyo, and this is a heritage that goes back, like China, goes back well over 1,000 years, and Tom Cruise running around The Last Samurai and the Roots of the Samurai and all. You have no affinity with what happened in Paris. Why would in any way you construct one of your marquee buildings as the Paris as the model? Why would you do it? You wouldn't. You wouldn't do it. All right, you wouldn't do it. What was that weird ass? Why did this just come into my head? That weird ass. 1979 or 82 movie, was it The Warriors? This gang just walking around trying to get back through town. It's like, that's like the CV's going on in that movie because there's nobody out on the streets except this. It might not be The Warriors, but it's like really dark, and it would be like The Warriors in that movie, if you know what I'm talking about. This gang just tries to get back home, and they're like constantly rival gangs, like trying to kill them and beat them up the whole way back, and it's really dark and whatever. It's at night. It would be like them designing their jacket based off a rival gang. In other words, I know that was... we waited all that for that? Sorry, man. You talk on the fly. See what you come up with. It ain't very good sometimes. But Tokyo's not going to model anything that's a marquee building off Paris. It's all a one-world system. See, they have their own roots, their own heritage. It's like, somebody in New York in 1950 saying, let's model one of the marquee buildings off something that was just bought in Riyadh, Saudi. What? So, they did, Matt. It's like, isn't the, I don't want to go there. Sorry. Okay. One world system. Let's just move on. Here's the, that makes sense. Who initially laid out the plans for, we're going to build this skyscraper here in Dubai. And talk about a one world system. Oh my goodness. It's going to be half a mile high and just the biggest pig of a gigantic building that's unnecessary in the history of the world, and complete replication of the Tower of Babel. And somebody came up with this, and then who's there? Like the Sultan, or who runs the place? I don't know. The Sultans of the Dire Straits Sultans of Swing got the plans. It was like, yeah, let's do it. That's a great idea. Let's build this freaking monstrosity that looks like a giant hypodermic. It's, guys, again, it's all if anybody's thinking countries are making decisions on their own when it comes to, countries are making decisions on their own when it comes to how to repair the potholes and maybe to make little tweaks to the national anthem or the flag. I mean, just stuff that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in terms of anything big. Oh, though there's a one world group somewhere, and they're not even they're a minion on behalf of something else, something that stands behind the screen, and even watch the greatest insight. I've said this before. Of it doesn't show you exactly how the Middle East was laid out, but you get an insight at how ridiculous it is. Watch Lawrence of Arabia, a great movie on its own. Try to watch like a 4K or Lawrence of Arabia, high definition 4K, and with the sound going. It really is it's incredibly well done. And I've said this before, so I'll be brief. But you see, I guess it was prior to World War I, before Sykes-Picot Treaty. It just sliced and diced the whole Middle East up and saying this is going to be this. They did the West, and the white man did the borders for the Middle East. And in Lawrence of Arabia, all these tribes and Bedouins they're running around on their camel armies with their curved swords. There's nothing there. They have no power to do no influence. Hey, maybe they helped Lawrence blow up a few trains and get into Damascus. Well, who cares? Who cares? They'd have no power. So as soon as the gas and the oil and all this stuff was found in the United Arab Emirates, UAE, Dubai, Qatar, some say potato, some say potato. It's still one of the biggest back and forth. Light beer from Miller, less filling, tastes great. Is it Qatar or Qatar? What's the difference? Saudi, and then you have, just carved out the bottom, Oman and Yemen, and okay. There's no way when trillions of dollars of oil and gas reserves were found that, I'll be brief because you know where I'm going, the West is going to say, well, per Sykes-Picot, and we did just give it all to them, and it would be wrong to take it back. Oh, sure. It proves by itself that it's all puppets of the one system. Okay, enough said. We all know this. So it started with Simone, and we're going to do another Olympic presentation now that just doesn't sit right. Okay, this is another one that just doesn't sit right. If any normie stumbled upon this and say, are you this guy's suggesting this? What? They would think it's so insane what I'm about to say. So for those guys, let me do 1 minute on Sha'Carri Richardson. Okay? 1 minute on the background if you... Okay. The Jamaicans have been dominating sprinting, but the U.S. women and men have been doing great as well for many, many years. It's Jamaica, U.S. Sprinters, 400 meter, 200 meter, Allison Felix, whatever. It's Jamaica, U.S., nobody else. Okay, well, the Jamaicans are back, and they're great. And who does the U.S. have? Well, 2 months out, we start hearing about this phenom, Sha'Carri Richardson. And, I watched maybe I watched 2 nights, a little bit of the Oregon, it was at Oregon Stadium, the trials, the U.S. trials. And, okay, the U.S. has somebody that can compete with the Jamaicans. She's a phenom. She's getting all this press leading up to the Olympics. Could be the fastest woman in the world, Sha'Carri Richardson. The 100-meter sprint is the big marquee event in almost the whole Olympics, even though it takes just about 10 seconds. So what happens? Okay. She is not going to what happened was I was watching the 100-meter just the other day, the heats or whatever, and I'm like, where's Sha'Carri Richardson? Well, she's not there. What happened? So you find out that she smoked pot, okay? And again, how they're using this is just incredible to me. Like, I'm not going to go into hand symbols or anything like that, okay? Forget that stuff. It's always there in its presentation. We point that out in 2010. So I start researching this. Sha'Carri Richardson will not go to the Olympics, and it says because she smoked pot. This is I'm looking at NPR, right? Did not make U.S. track and field roster, 30-day suspension after she tested positive for THC, the intoxicant found in marijuana. I'm like, first off, I'm going, marijuana? How's that helping her run faster? Why would the Olympic Committee even care? They're going to destroy somebody's life over marijuana. But guys, you know where I'm going with this? Incredibly, it seems like another system presentation. I can pretend the world works normally, or I can hear the screaming out of my inner knowing, the inner tuning fork, the frequency we're all tuned to. It screams something else. And then as you look into it, the evidence almost always lines up with that inner tuning fork. So right in the prime of her career, 21-year-old sprinter told NBC Today's Show that she did do it. She's not denying it. She used the drugs or marijuana to cope with emotional panic. This is, okay, I'll get back to it. If anything sounds funny here, guys, we'll break down each element of it. She needed it to cope with emotional panic and the pot after a reporter told her days before the trials about her biological mother's death. Now, my biological mother still is alive, but I highly doubt a reporter is going to share that with me. I might get the news from somebody else, like somebody in the family, or even the obituary section from the Philadelphia Inquirer. It's a reporter. Well, Matt, you're not a famous person. The reporter, this don't make no sense. We'll come back to it, okay? When a story doesn't add up, there's inside the system, there are elements that, because almost intentionally, they don't make sense. Okay. Then she said she knew the Olympic rules about drug use and marijuana, and she shouldn't have broken them. Look at that. Okay, I'll break it down in a second. Let's just get through the facts, ma'am. She said, quote, "I know what I'm not allowed to do, and I still made that decision, and I'm not making an excuse or looking for any empathy." Okay, another quote from her. "I'm sorry I can't be the Olympic champ this year, but I promise I'll be your world champion next year." And I went, wait a second here. Talk about going a little too easily, okay? Now, this is an exercise, guys, like the Simone Biles thing. Tune into your inner tuning fork, your inner knowing. You know, the frequency we're on, which we can just see right through everything now. Just let that yell out at you. And, you know, you probably already is yelling like, this is just, first off, she's going too easily. You know, a sprinter like this, her whole life for one moment in the Olympics, the prime, 21-year-old. Now, I know, Matt, she'll just be 23 or 24 when the Olympics come back again. Oh, there's that sometimes can be getting, I know there's Allison Felix and some people that are like ageless, but you know, your prime is 21. Okay. I know she might be just as good in the next Olympics, but you know, you work your whole life and then you say, first of all, you just say, well, yeah, I knew I couldn't smoke pot, and I just needed to because a reporter told me my mother died. Okay. It doesn't sit right with anybody listening, of course. So she goes too easily, saying, I know I wasn't supposed to. And it's like, well, I can't be there with you, but I'll be back. I mean, I'm sorry. You know, your whole life is flushed. Let's just say anything about it is real. Somebody crying out from their bathtub saying, what are you saying, Matt? Didn't happen? It's a system presentation? I'm saying, yes, that's likely. Yeah. But why would that be? You're going to have to explain it. Well, I will explain it. Give me a chance. Get back into the bathtub. Hold your ducky. Get back down into the bubbles and relax. I will explain it. So she goes too quickly, too easily. If anything were real, she wouldn't admit it. You know, be like, well, test me again. What do you mean pot? And even, in my past, she could say, I have smoked pot, but how does that help me run the 100? Like, what is that even, why is that even on the list? Like, isn't it supposed to be about banned substance that would improve my performance? I'm all high in stone, like I'm going to do a gigantic blunt before taking the starting blocks? Like, how's that going to help me? Like, so you're going to ruin my whole life because your tests, there'd be some pushback, I think, you know? And then she would get people on her side like, wait a second, at least reduce the suspension to 20 days so she can go to Olympics or whatever, or do the suspension on the back end. It's pot. It's not steroids. It's not human growth hormone. It's not Dianabol steroids or something that would help her performance or calf implants. It's just a pot. So she could gather a lot of. Does she try to gather that support? No, it's just, I made a mistake and I admit it. And a reporter told me about my mother's death. So there's always going to be an element in the story that just completely breaks the whole story down. A reporter tell her about, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, obviously this is like So Matt, wait a second. What are the? And I'm not. Again, I'm good at reading the Matrix Code, saying this is a false presentation in terms of ultimately what they're out to do. And I don't. I'm not always that great at. But so let's just speculate a little bit here, okay? Let's do the second stage. So she's in on this, Matt? She's in on it, or how would that actually, whether it happened or not. Let's just say she did smoke pot. All right, let's just assume that for the case of this. Let's say she did smoke pot and she tested. I think her first reaction would be like, well, wait a second, we need to test again. We need to gain support. They're going to take me away from my lifelong dream because I smoked pot. My mother died. I did smoke it. She's talking to her agent, for example. But the agent, if the system wants something to happen, like her not going to the Olympics, for whatever reason, the system, the screen working through its minions without the minions even being aware of what they're saying to her. As we look at this over and over again, the minions that that work on behalf of the dark reality, in very, very few cases, or in some cases, no, they're not aware of it. It's just, to me, it's way more download. They're doing what the system wants, what the screen wants, what the dark reality wants, without being in on it, without being handed a cue card. So let's say she did, and she smoked the pot, and the agent, just completely carrying out the will of the system, comes in with somebody from NBC and says, "Listen, Sha'Carri, listen. You get along." They could say exactly what she needs to be told here to go along with what the system wants. Now, at this point, I'm assuming the system wants this story, her not going to the Olympics. We'll speculate that on the back end why. But could say, again, just flowing through the running scripts, the agent, the NBC executives sitting her down saying, "Sha'Carri, I know at this point you want to bring the press in. You want to make a huge deal out of this. You feel like your life is ruined. But before you do this, they're not going to change their opinion. Again, between you and me, talk. If the system has decided she's not going to the Olympics over marijuana, then she's not going. Okay, the system and what stands behind the screen has a little bit of power in the big fish in a small pond, perhaps, but they're pretty powerful here. So they could say, "Sha'Carri, this is not going to happen either way. So you have two choices. You can gain humongous fan following, keep your Nike endorsements, be big about it, say I did it, I'm supporting my team, I'll be back in the World Championships next year, and you can actually come out of this better." They can convince her of that. Say the right things to the reporters. Don't say, "I can't believe they're destroying my dream." Say the right things, and a year from now, the Nike contracts will still be coming in, $20-30 million. Here's what you have to do, Sha'Carri. I know you want to make a big stink of it, but here's what and she could be convinced of that. She could say, "I'm going to just have to, after a day of being up, I have to just bite my tongue and do what my agent, my manager, my handlers say I need to do here." So, obviously something stinks in the whole reality presentation here. And, why exactly would the system not want her to go to the Olympics over some pot story? Now, I'm not going to mention the hand symbols or the orange hair. We did that in 2010. She was running at LSU with blonde hair and recently became orange. And yeah, we all know that's 33 and whatever. Okay. But I'm more interested in seeing, what is actually being presented beyond a hand symbol or a color, and then ultimately what they're trying to get out of it. So in terms of, what is going on here, we'll speculate for 5 minutes and move on. This is a screen exercise, and in the end of the day, in terms of understanding ourselves, it's pointless, but it can be fun to do. So if this whole thing is somehow a setup, contrived, whether she smoked pot or not, and the system wanted her out of the Olympics, why? Why would the system want her out of the Olympics, present this story, and, hey, Matt, her mother really died. Okay, there's always going to be elements of real in this, but ultimately, I think you would agree that this stinks. There's something wrong with this story. It's not all that it seems. So you go back into what the system wants to do to a human being or whatever stands behind the screen. Its main playbook its main blocking and tackling, of course, is distraction. We know that. It will try to distract a human being away from understanding and knowing itself until the day it dies. And it's been quite successful at doing that. So a sidebar to, or like camped on the back of that, riding on the coattails, or a mini-me to the Dr. Evil of distraction is confusion. The reality, working through its minions and its systems, it works to bring an endless amount of confusion in as many areas as possible onto a human being. Well, Matt, that sounds like the same as distraction. So a human being doesn't understand itself. Yeah, exactly. Create mental conflict, create states of dis-ease in the mind or cognitive dissonance. So let's just look at the confusion aspect of what potentially is going on here, and not in people's conscious mind, maybe in their subconscious. Excuse me. Oh, you sneeze in a store and watch them run. Sneeze in a store, a crowded store, and watch them run. Like you're some dragon, just fire just came flowing out of your mouth. They watch them run. The mask up. We got a sneezer, aisle 10. But it's actually a little bit of reality break. Have you noticed how few people have sneezed in crowds since this? And have you noticed how few people have been looked sick? How few people have coughed? I mean, just the hundreds and hundreds of times you've been out over the last year or so, it's very, very rare. The incidence of coughing and sneezing is way down, and not just because people are holding it back. There's something weird thing with reality itself. I don't want to go there. Okay, sorry. That's just too strange. Okay. It brings distraction. It brings confusion. So let's do this exercise. Now, I'm sorry to the people that smoke a lot of pot that aren't going to fit this mold. I'm just saying, what does the system bring us in terms of pot smokers? Okay, that she's being attached to that story here. Pot smoking, everybody has this in the back of their mind, whether it's real or not, or fair or not. There you have Jeff Spicoli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High in the van going to the dance. The van pulls up, the doors open, and the smoke comes piling out with Eric Stoltz. And he's like, "Hey, bud." No, let's party. That's terrible. I'm not even going to try. Hey, bud, let's party. Eric Stoltz, who just got kicked off the set of Back to the Future, he's supposed to be before Michael J. Fox. He comes out, and the smoke and the stoner presentation, Mr. Hand, he's so out of it. He's so confused. He's so stupid. Now, this stoner presentation has come through tons of movies and TV shows. There's something associated with pot smoking. Okay, fair or not. However, there was an element in my high school, and maybe you had it, that actually lived up to the stoner look and feel presented in movies and TV. There was this class. They dress the same. They have their tight, ripped jeans. Their notebooks would be all, they have the black Sharpie marker with like bands I was just not familiar with, like Jethro Tull. It's like Armageddon. Who's Jethro Tull? I said, you know what pisses me off when somebody thinks like Jethro Tull is just a guy in a band? Who's Jethro Tull? Then they have the Led Zeppelin ZOSO. And like, what the F's that? I didn't know what that shit was in high school. And they have their Leonard Skinner stuff painted, all the stickers all over their stuff. And they did have the longer hair. It looks a little. There was a class in my high school. I doubt I was the only high school to have this stoner class. And I'm not. If you just, I'm not saying if you smoke pot you're in this class. I'm just saying it's not completely illegitimate what's presented on movies and TV. So they would. They talked different too, and one guy talked like he was something wrong with him. He's like, "Hey man, yeah, we'll go get stoned, man. We'll go stay." It was like he fit the mold. It's like, so people have, right or wrong, or people have this image, pot smoking. So then that doesn't really fit with this woman here. Okay, say what you want about her. She's very energetic, bright. Has a gleam in her eye. Just in control. The top of her fitness game, not, this going back to my stoner class in high school, if there was a relay, I would not want to pass the baton to these people. I don't think they could make it once around the track. I don't think so. It's like, wait a second, she doesn't fit the mold. So, and nobody's doing this consciously, guys. it plays games with our subconscious, with our unconscious. So, okay, I'm going on and on. You have stoners being lazy, blah, 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 and, foggy, and then this. Okay, there's confusion there. Sorry, I'll wrap it up. You have the legal confusion that's presented in this story. You have states making it like Denver or Colorado completely legal. Other states completely legal. Almost all the states now allow the medical being legal. So it's just this push towards legalization where it's there's no crime anymore in many jurisdictions. And then all of a sudden she's being punished for it. Well, guys, back to the original part of the presentation I was just making about the stereotypical view of pot smokers. I forgot to say the most important thing. So if it creates that type of person, how is it a performance enhancer? How is it going to help her? Why is she being punished? How is something that does that to people, or what's at least portrayed in movies and TV, how is that a performance enhancer to make her more on her game to win the 100? So that's the main aspect of confusion that I almost forgot. So then you have the illegal side. We hear for 10 years, no state's going to make it more illegal. Every state is opening up in this regard, making it more legal. Now, this is decriminalized. This is legal. So all this legal opening up, and she's being punished. So there's like mental conflict in people there. Like there's the underlying theme that authority always wins. It's like, you know what? You can't fight the system. You can't fight City Hall. Even they'll find a way to get you if they want to get you. Even there's no, that's the old story of everybody, which is I don't buy, but everybody just driving out to get groceries. Everybody breaks 10 laws a day that you don't even know about. I mean, we were always told that. Probably the system just wants us thinking that. And somebody's screaming out at me. There are so many laws in the books that we probably are, and we probably are. Traffic laws you don't even know about, things like that. So these aren't the big ones, guys. The big one in this case has to do with, I don't even know how I can even not say it or say it. There's certain things going on in the system presentation today with race and gender and class and men versus women and things like that. See, yeah, so when people like me, suburban people of certain, race, creed, religion, people like me, read it, just you see the story for what it is, like or what it's not, but you see the facts presented in the article. Okay, I'm saying like a normie like me down the cul-de-sac, Bob down here, whatever. He says, oh, she smoked pot, she's being punished, it all kind of makes sense. Maybe there's a little bit of subconscious conflict between the legal, illegal thing and the fact that the stoners classified as being, lazy and sloppy, and they're actually punishing like something that makes somebody lazy and sloppy is going to be a performance enhancer. How's that? Okay, but what does the inner city take away from this? Okay, yeah, to me, it's pretty obvious. What does and there will be probably no articles written about it because the message is getting out to the type or the group or the class of person or the community. Put it that way. That's a politically correct way. The community that it wants to really hit the story hard into that community is saying, okay, the man is now bringing another female black woman down. All right. I don't know how to Kobo code around that, but if I can't say that, we're really in trouble. That's the message that's coming across without any words being said. What was it in Clear and Present Danger? The president wants them to get the message whether the phone rings or not. So the message to certain communities in cities is this is the man again trying to stop and bring down a strong black woman. No one's ever going to write that. No one's ever going to print that. But I assure you, maybe millions of people are taking that message away because they've been conditioned to, per what the system has ramped up in the last 5 years. And that has been inhuman. Greg and I were talking the other day. You can't turn on a television commercial anymore and without I don't even know how to say it. How do you talk around it? But you know what I'm going to say without it's if it's certain actors or certain type of presentation, the commercial, the race has to come up. It's just in every commercial. Like, and the people around us don't see how impossibly unnatural that is. Like, how did this happen? Like, where did, like, how did this people around us or people down the cul-de-sac just this, like, they just, you're sailing on the ship of fools in the river of insanity is just normal. Like, well, how did this happen? Every commercial, there's a new series coming on Comedy Central. New series on Comedy Central. And, I don't even know if I can say the guy's skin color. I don't know what I can say here. I'm seriously. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is Rob is guys. Rob's one guy trying to replace a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure, and there are certain people that have had little issues like my free voice won't load and this and that. You know, he has to get the video has to load on 50 different platforms, including phones. It's so much more than you would think. And when we're completely ready, that will be the end of this. All right. And I know I'll lose half of you or more because people just, for some reason, you just can't. It's so difficult to just type freevoice.io, but whatever. I'm not going to continue to do this. This is ridiculous how we have to talk around this stuff. So it's about, I was in the Comedy Central presentation, black guys driving a car. And I'm thinking, okay, well, here it comes. Here it comes. You know it's coming. Can't just be something funny about how we're going to make fun of whatever. And then is it Stephen Colbert might be in the car with him or some other, and then of course it goes right into race. I'm like, and then they make it funny, like he's talking about race, and Stephen Colbert's like, well, I just meant the race on the Olympics that's coming up. But see, they're still introducing it. They're still dropping that brick on your foot. And me and Greg are like, oh, anybody surprised? It's no commercial that has certain races of people. They have to mention it. Anyway, I could go on and on and on. But the point is the people down your cul-de-sac just think this is normal. Yeah, this is just what society's evolved into. And you conspiracy people think there's puppet masters pulling strings, and you're even beyond that. You conspiracy people are really gone because it's not like people getting messages or getting emails and being told what to do. There's this invisible force of the Lochnar that's moving people to do things and moving society into a certain way, and the people are like on a download. You people are on a download, and they don't even really know what they're doing to serve this general evil Lochnar that stands behind the screen. You people are gone, man. It's like that, my favorite scene from Lethal Weapon 1. I'm going to play that on Free Voice again sometime. He's like, if you don't deliver our product, you'll talk to Mr. Joshua. And that's after he put the lighter up to his skin, and the guy's like, Joshua. I love that guy. But he's my favorite tertiary or post-tertiary character in all of movie history. He's like, you guys are gone, man. Yeah, Joshua. Sorry, if you don't know what I mean, I'll play it again. And even when I play it on Free Voice, like, what's so great about that? That scene sucks. Is it Adam Sandler and Billy Madison? Donkey Kong sucks. Sega Genesis is the greatest platform. Sorry. So just keeping the man keeping her down. That's the message. And even if she never smoked anything, she could be, again, her handlers or her agent or whoever could go to her and say, look, you're in a struggle. Women of your age and your your race are in a struggle, and you're going to help it. You got to take one for the team here. And Nike is very, very grateful. Nike, there's a little contract coming across the table. Nike's very grateful. If you play ball, they'll enhance the $40 million contract. Nike's very grateful, so we can do this. You'll get them next time. Next Olympics. So, that's, the point is that's me in a roundabout way wasting, I'm sorry if I wasted your time or whatever. This is just sit back and let's just ponder the big issues here, saying that you can a presentation is made, and at the moment your inner knowing sniffs it out as being something else, we've tuned it. We're tuned off the frequency. Our inner knowing, inner tuning forth. We can read this stuff in a second. And usually it's good enough to just say, this is a system presentation. There's something not legitimate about it, Simone Biles or whatever. And if you if you could just be big enough to say, I'm not even gonna look into it. This is the system wanting to get something out of me, and I'm not going to give it to it. That would be the healthiest way of going about it. We'll close with this, guys. I have no answers here, giant revelation or anything, or just might be. It's just incredible to me what's happening with the empty stadiums and the empty seats. And before we close on this, or let me come back to this. I put this tab up. The hugging presentation talked about a week ago, or a little more of a week ago or so. I haven't been able to watch. That's the hugging of the women's beach volleyball players, and I know all teams don't do it. The leading women's team does it after every point, and I haven't been able to watch any of those. I used to watch, what was her name, Misty May and Kerry Walsh. Sorry, Misty May and Kerry Walsh. I used to watch in the other Olympics, and they'd give a little slap, but the leading U.S. women's team with the hug every time, I can't deal with it. I can't take it because if it was completely legitimate, and I believed it was, then I would just put up with it. But I just see it as like another system intrusion. It would, and I don't know if I even explained this well when I did the video on it. I'll only be a minute or two here, but I guess the point I wanted to make was, is this a behavior that the system would want? Women do, showing that sort of overall would the system or whatever stands behind the screen. Maybe you could say sometimes it can't always impose itself, can't always shout through the screen. But let's say this on this day it's impotent. Whatever the Dr. Evil and Mini-Me that stands behind the screen, would you want, if it had to choose, if it could put a card through the slot, would it choose to want to have the women hugging after every point, or would it not want that? Well, of course it would want that for a lot of reasons, going back to everything that has happened in the last 15 years with Caitlyn Jenner and everything else. Of course it would want that presentation. And those that are doing it, I'm pretty sure of this, without anybody, like I said in the last video, sitting them down saying, this is what we want you to do. It just, those on the frequency, on the download, and those down that end of the dial, they're just always will start behaving as the river of insanity flows and the ship of fools sails down it. They'll always start behaving in the way that you could say the reality wants them to behave. So I couldn't watch anymore. I couldn't watch any more women's volleyball for that reason. But let's go back to this. The empty stadiums. It is incredible, guys, because in terms of engineering or architecture, I mean, the Japanese, let's just put it this way. When they were doing, whether these stories are real or not, when they were doing the Athens, Greece, this is before Greece completely melted down, they were saying all these stories and rumors a year before, 2 years before, that they're not going to get these things done in time. And I think that was, that story, if you remember before Athens, Greece, if you're that old, it was, they're not going to get these stadiums built in time because Greece is so dysfunctional. And of course, they got everything done on time, and that to me, as looking back, was just a story that was put out, and it was put out hardcore for 6 months that they're not going to have the stuff finished because Greece is so dysfunctional and so delinquent, and they can't build their stadiums. And looking back again, that was the one world system would have never allowed that. They would have stepped in with the huge contractors or whatever country just to get it done. So that was a story that was pushed. And why that was pushed so hard, well, who knows and who cares? But the point is that that if there's any element of that is real, the Japanese aren't going to be like that. Like, they're going to get it done. Is there any, that's just what they do. I mean, they're just, there's no question they were going to have. So they everything was done perfectly. Okay, these stadiums, they're empty, and it's just so difficult. I don't know. It's so difficult for me to stomach the Olympics and to keep watching, where every venue, huge. I mean, the gymnastics center is just for gymnastics. It might not have a use. Obviously they'll try to do something in there if they can ever put people together again. But this huge venue, there's nobody there. Now, if there's certain competitions you flip by and someone's like, I saw people there, they let the other Olympians in. Like the women's swimming team came into the pool to watch the men swim, or if they're already in the Olympic Village or whatever, and they're not tainted with the they're not tainted with the disease. So they're not, they don't let any family in, they don't let any friends in, then nobody off the street, not nobody. So those from the Olympic Village or whatever, they can come in. But you end up a lot of times, like the women's beach volleyball, there's these huge stadium, nobody there. Okay, again, like if you see 150 people, well, so what? The stadium holds 8 to 10 to 15,000. The gymnastics probably holds 15 to 20,000, and it's 95%, 98% empty. And the Olympic Stadium for track and field, it could hold, 80,000? It's massive. So you have these huge, beautiful stadiums for all the events, even events hardly anybody watches. There's these, the Japanese built these incredible brand new facilities, and they're all empty. I mean, just the amount of buildings, the amount of sports they have in the Olympics now is really bordering on the ridiculous. I don't, what's the point of that? They have these team handball where they just throw it's like basketball, I guess, and soccer combined. They throw this small ball around to each other, and it's like trying to score. It's a team sport like basketball. Then they try to throw this little ball through a net. Look up team handball. It's like, what is this? Like, why does it? The amount of sports they now have skateboarding, and they have surfing, and they have 3-on-3 basketball. Like, maybe at some point we have to look into what is the point of all this. They have basketball in the huge basketball facility. Then they have 3-on-3. The U.S. Olympic team, 3 people or 4 people versus Lithuania, 3-on-3, half court. Like, what? Why? What's the point of all this stuff? Anyway, so there's just this. I don't know, guys. Like, I always apologize and say I don't want to be too conspiratorial, but I hear you talking to me. We almost can't go far enough, and we don't go far enough. And I'm saying, and this point relates to the last point, there's almost like a reason for the empty stadiums. It's some sort of subconscious message to those watching. I know. If anybody's saying, Matt, you go too far, you get in a little bit. I hear you. I don't, but almost every time I think I'm going too far, it kind of turns out to be, this is the presentation that dark reality wants to make. I mean, is it telling us that, I don't know. There's a reason for it. In other words, I'm sorry, it's hard to talk through issues of this size, guys, but I'm saying that they could have let in, even the Japanese, and as scared as they are over this or whatever, they answer to the one world system, okay? They don't just answer to Japan. They could have let in even just locals, even if you didn't allow people to come in internationally into Japan, they could have let in a 20% occupancy to provide a little bit of life to the stadiums. A little bit of fan appeal, a clapping. It's almost, you get the feel that these empty stadiums, including the opening ceremonies, was so dark, so creepy. It was just this gigantic stadium, empty, with just the Japanese performers, just 30, 40, 50 performers, like hardly anything going on down on the ground, when usually, in Beijing, they have like thousands of actors and people carrying flags and running around in light shows, and there's hardly anything going on in Japan. It was just, I'm saying, even the presentation of the opening ceremonies was like consistent with the feel they wanted with the empty stadiums. And there was, somebody pointed out to me, a point I failed to make, but I did notice when I talked about the opening ceremonies a week or two back. They showed, of course, they started talking about the sea, how difficult it's been on the athletes, right in the opening part of the opening ceremonies. And they showed people training alone. They always have to, one of the big presentations of this whole thing, how reality is presenting this whole sea thing to the world, is isolation. And the constant push of the normalization that this is the way it is and this is the way it's going to be. So they did have they'll show, they went through in the opening ceremony, the last 14 months has been incredibly difficult on the athletes. And then they show like one spotlight comes out and there's one athlete running on a treadmill. And this is the opening ceremonies. Normally there should be like 1,000 people down on the ground performing, thousands and tens of thousands in the stands. So there's nobody in the stands, and they're like spotlights on like one or two people. I mean, that's how desolate the opening ceremony, or parts of it was. So the guy just running on a treadmill, an athlete running on a treadmill, and then an athlete on a rowing machine, and an athlete on a stationary bike. But the message is they didn't show anybody like training naturally, like running through the presentation or mock presentation of somebody running through a park or being by themselves in nature. It was all in your house, in your little apartment, shoved in your bedroom, training by yourself, just with the creepy Peloton trainers yelling at you, come on, you can do it. One more lap. Creepy. Are they talking to you live, these creepy Peloton instructors? Or I see you're slacking off there, Joe in Minnesota. Get on your Peloton and pedal. Who wants some creepy Peloton? That's probably some $10,000 exercise bike or something where there's like live trainers screaming at you as you're on the bike. But I mean, so it's all isolation, training on your own, and even with that, training in your bedroom. There's no going out to the park or anything like that. So it's all part of it. But okay, let's leave that behind. The last thing to close with, one of the main parts of this Olympic presentation is the mask. It is, if I could, I don't, if I could get into its head, if I could converse with its Joshua, greetings, Professor Falcon. If I could converse with it, AI, whatever, and I could sometimes I get into its head and it kind of knows the way it's doing business. It's kind of, here's the way it's doing business with this Olympic presentation. And it's all thought out, of course. Well, we're going to let you people in the U.S. and other countries, we're going to, let you go back to something that looked like a normal life for a while. Like you bet you start buying your Coke Zero 12-pack in April of 2021 and saying, hey, get out there and enjoy your summer again, and Ruby Tuesdays or whatever, or TJF Fridays, or one of these, not Ruby Tuesdays, what was it? What's the one Ricky Bobby went to? Applebee's. Yeah, Ricky Bobby. Yeah. Ricky Bobby, if you beat me, I will return to Formula One. That was terrible. I'll have to watch it before I do the voice. I can't do it on the fly. I'm losing it. Applebee's. So Applebee's say, hey, welcome back to the neighborhood. Good to see you back. When the major companies are carrying forth the theme of you can have a life again, then you can sit back and say the system's going to allow us this summer, going to let the chickens out of the Purdue Tyson pen and run around free range for a while. And the Coke wouldn't have ever got that wrong on the box. If it says this summer's going to be open, it'll be open. They got a real big seat at the creepy table. They ain't going to get it wrong. So that being said, a lot of countries they look more normal, and the people in Australia are like crying out, saying, I'm not even allowed to, I have to get permission to leave the bathtub. I got to get permission from the state to leave the bathtub even. They're not even allowed to leave they're not even allowed to leave the bathroom. This, I guess in Australia, such infrastructure, they just slide food under the door. Nobody can go out anywhere. So that's, of course, that your situation's far worse, but they've let right now the chickens are free ranging around the United States. Oh, the NASCAR events, and people are in the stands and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Which, of course, after you get 200 million people to rent the movie, you have to give a little bit of that back. Or what's the point of all of your big movie rental push? Of course, this was easily predicted. Can't get 250 million people to rent the movie and then just say you got to stay in your bathroom. You can go back to that. You let them out for a while, then a Delta V or a Transor Z. The Delta V, in the movie or the Disney series Loki, the whole series, I do this for Hobo Code reasons. The Loki series is about variance. The Disney series Loki is about variance. So regarding what's going on now, we have the Delta Burke V. And I'm going to just call it, I'll do a Hobo Code on the fly, we'll call it the Transor Z. Transor Z, I think, was an old anime type cartoon. The Transor Z. So they'll say, okay, hey, you guys will, maybe it'll be the epsilon or the next after D. So you guys got to get back inside because we got to do another movie. We already did the Action Jacksonation on VHS. You got to wait. It's going to be another year for the DVD to come out because there's another Loki type variant out there, and you're not adequately protected. So whatever. Look, they can never hit it with as much force as they did. They can never hit it with as much force as they did initially, because as you go through it again and again, people become used to this and habituated to it, and it won't. But maybe they'll be able to recreate 65 or 70% of what it was, and then if they go back and try to play the gig again, instead of playing a new gig, then it'll be, they'll only be 60% or 50% potent of what it was. And but the point is, guys, I'm sorry for being so long-winded. As they were letting the U.S. run around, they bring this Olympics back, and the whole Olympics is a gigantic presentation of the mask. And the Japanese people that they have working there are very, very prison guard when it comes to this. So at first I started getting on the athletes, like, why is Katie Ledecky in her interview right after the pool? She's got the black mask on. She's sucking. She just swam literally a mile. And she's so winded, she's inhaling, exhaling, sucking the mask. And this is almost dangerous. But I watched closely, and the Japanese it is literally like, it might not be the captain of the guard from Shawshank. But they're like that. I mean, they will literally they aggressively hand the athletes, like, as soon as they come out of the pool, here's your mask, put it on. And I've seen where a swimmer's about to come out onto the pool deck, and the Japanese person, like the security that holds them back until it's time for them to come into the pool deck, the person's like pointing at them, like, no, you put your mask on. They're very, very aggressive about it. And the athletes, they're not conspiracy people there to make a statement like we would. So they comply. And so it's not really the athlete's fault. I mean, as soon as their event is done, a Japanese security of some point, basically gets in their face and says, put this on, I'm sure they were sat down before and told about whether the Japanese told them directly or they say, look, the Japanese are different, right, than we are back home now. They're, it's amazing. They even let this, they'll have the scripts ready to run. It's amazing that, it was close where the Japanese weren't even going to allow the Olympics. So we're lucky just to be here, like Dante's Inferno and Clerks. I shouldn't even be here right now. You shouldn't even be here, you Olympians. So, they just spent $10 billion on stadiums that nobody's going to sit in. They want you to wear the mask. They all got the lecture. Wear the mask. They got the lecture. And even if they didn't, and those that get lax, there's a Japanese person literally ready to pounce on them. And it's subtle. It's usually not on camera. But I've observed 10 things since I've been watching that show it's not the athlete's fault for putting. The Japanese are all over them. And we'll talk about on Free Voice how that doesn't typically surprise me. But so there's masks everywhere in the Olympics other than for the athletes that are competing at the time in which they're competing. When they're done, put it on. And this is a massive intentional presentation. All right? If somebody's crying out to me, I can hear you saying, Matt, this is the way a lot of Asian countries are. The Japanese would always, considering what is being presented to the world, the Japanese would always be real tough on the mask. And I hear you. But don't think it's, to me, ultimately, the way the world can be explained, because there is no other explanation for it, is people tune to its frequency. Then they do what it wants. Then they take its download. Then fine. Then most Asian countries and most people there are taking its download. They're not doing this on their own. It's all part of the. So, guys, maybe if the Japanese would have normally pushed for the mask anyway, but I'm saying it's ramped up as aggressively as possible because it's a gigantic world reminder as the whole world watches the Olympics. If your country is not in a mask right now or whatever, but this is just the Olympics will remind you that this is the way the world is now, and we could go back to it, and it's, don't forget, like, that you're not out of the woods. This is the world, and it's the Olympics. If you could take every camera pan and every shot and collectively add it up over NBC, CNBC showing the Olympics, Peacock showing the Olympics, USA showing the Olympics, there have been easily 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 people shown on film wearing a mask. Hundreds of thousands. It is complete 100% compliance across. There are very few exceptions. The gymnasts, they get done the routine, uneven bars, boom, they put it on, and they're told to do this by the Japanese. It is a gigantic mask presentation, and it is. Maybe I'm missing something, but to me, it's pretty simple. It's a reminder to the world that we ain't done with you yet. We ain't done with you yet. And this is what the world is in other parts of the world, guys. We're gonna let you free range chickens out in the certain U.S. states. You run around out there, but don't forget, we're gonna bring you back in the pen at some point. This ain't, we ain't done with you. So that's the major. The empty stadiums combined with the masks, the endless masks in Tokyo in the Olympics, is an on-purpose psychological presentation that, I don't think anybody listening to this would disagree with me about that. If a normie stumbled upon this video, they would have already called for the men in the white trucks with the white jackets where you strap your arms behind your back and they jacket you up. They would have already made that phone call a long time ago. Thanks for listening.